not just perhaps the ones in the camps. What's your response to that?
Thank you. It is important to ensure inclusion in the coverage of refugees, and therefore it's important to get their stories, get sources that can get you stories of the refugees in the camps and those outside. It's important to balance their stories. It's important to highlight the positives of what's happening about their integration, marriages, those who are intermarrying and thriving, as opposed to just making it a pity story, like I said earlier. And for this, it would be important for journalists, really. The reason why some of these stories don't get to be told or don't get to see the light of day is possibly because they lack originality. They are stories that have been told time and again. There is no innovation in the way the story is being told. So journalists need to be more innovative in their storytelling and to apply new techniques of telling stories, to get fresher stories, to apply techniques of investigative journalism in the story, just to bring on board fresh stories, because a good story is a good story. A good story sells regardless of the story. So if your story doesn't make it for publishing, then maybe there's something about it. It's either not refreshing, there's no new angle to it, and these fresh angles can be obtained through collaborating with the people that work in those areas that are able to give you story leads. So innovation is key in getting stories told.
Okay, thank you so much. To our final question, Jonas. Who's Jonas? Where? Yes, go ahead, Jonas.
Yes, my name is Jonas Ndaisenga, Executive Director of Umoja Refugee, a refugee-led organization, Burundian by nationality. My question is simple, and it goes to the fundamental issue of refugee ID card. This refugee ID card has two numbers. The main individual number is of 8 numbers. That's what is called to be my number as a refugee. But even to the UNHCR and agencies working with UNHCR, when I go there for their services, they don't take it. They ask me for proof of registration, which has 11 numbers. And to my understanding, this means this is what is in the system. So is the refugee ID card a scam? The second question, when we talk about implementation and inclusion and also integration, we can't talk about all of those issues before we tackle the issue of these documentations, the validity of our documents. Because that has been the decades and decades of being the roots of all the problems. What is the issue within that? Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Jonas. Dr. Maluki, I'll let you respond to that. Are you comfortable responding to that?
Well, I may say something about the question, but my main point would be not necessarily with the ID cards. Maybe someone will speak on that.
Okay.
But I wanted to raise an issue that is coming from the concern of the refugee and the gentleman. That yes, we have provision where we say that we need to provide 1, 2, 3 for the refugees, but in reality, you find that the provisions are not as expected. And it is not just with regard to small things like IDs and other issues of identification, but also the broader picture. Because, for example, when you look at what causes refugees, majorly is conflict, right? Wars do push people away. Unfortunately, refugees are not part of the conflict resolution mechanisms. We normally end war, but then we forget the victims of the war. And probably all these other multiple challenges that come up part of that problem. We have seen wars in Somalia, in South Sudan. We have had mediators going to South Sudan to bring peace. Unfortunately, there is no provision after you guys have settled. How are you doing with the refugees? It's left as an outside question. In Kenya, we had the post-election violence, where we even had Kofi Annan coming and mediating between the protagonist